So you want your training program to have impact, long-term, lasting, business results, gold stars kind of impact. What is it going to take to make that happen? It's the million-dollar question. Every one of us wants to do good work, and to do good work, we have to make sure that we're on target to hit the impact goals that we've created for ourselves. There are a certain number of factors that if they are in place, it increases the predictability that our learning is going to have the impact that we all greatly desire. What are those factors, you're wondering? Well, that's what this video is all about. Hi, my name is Dr. Elena Schlachta. I'm a nerd. I absolutely love investigating what it takes to create learning, talent, and performance improvement initiatives that actually make an impact. And in this video, we've got 3 key factors that are essential for having the kind of impact that we want. In fact, predictably so. And it's not just me who's saying it. There's research to back this up. And if you want to read the research in more depth, I've got some awesome links for you to check out in the notes below. What are those 3 factors, you're wondering? First, stakeholder support. Second, designing for impact. And third, knowing your metrics going into the program and having a solid measurement and evaluation strategy in place. In this video, we've got an example that ties all 3 of those important factors together. We're bringing Candice Mitchell back, who in a previous video helped us figure out a process for how we can build relationships with stakeholders where we had none and we have something really strong in the end. And that only took between 4 to 8 weeks. If that sounds interesting, check out our earlier video with Candice Mitchell. So often it happens that stakeholders, your manager or boss, they come to you, maybe it's even a group of learners or employees in the organization. They come to you and they're like, hey, Elena, we really want training on this thing because we believe it's going to have this outcome. Could you make that happen for us? And we're like, sure, why not? So then we do a little more investigation and we find that the thing that our boss, our learners, or our stakeholders told us was the solution is in fact not the solution. And in order for us to move toward being able to implement that solution, we've got to pitch the new idea to our stakeholders. How do you imagine we might get ready for the pitch and actually do the pitch? That is what Candice is going to talk to us about first. Remember, these 3 pieces of the puzzle all interconnect. If one of them is missing, the rest doesn't work. So if we have a great idea for a comprehensive learning solution that actually is going to lead to the impact that we want, we've got to have buy-in for that. And in order to get the buy-in, we have to have a perfect pitch. Listen to how Candice suggests we get ready to make that pitch, and then we do the pitch with our stakeholders.
Stakeholders asked you for a program to develop computer literacy skills because they said that's what was needed to help our learners get jobs. And you said, wait a minute, I'm not so sure that's true. And you ended up pitching a completely different solution to help learners ultimately get jobs. Tell us how that process went.
Yeah, so it was pretty early on that I requested that pivot. So when they said it's computer literacy skills, it was almost a gut feel that I don't think that that's going to be effective. So at that point, I had no data. I hadn't done any observations. So I couldn't really go back to the clients, who were paying me for this work and say, I have this gut feel that you're wrong. That wasn't going to go down well. So I went back to them and asked for that time, as you mentioned. And then that's when I did the observation and the data mining. And I really put together a full picture. And that to me was a critical moment in the process. Was I was able to say, I've observed from all different angles. I have gathered this data. I've looked at your business metrics. I've looked at the assessments of the audience, the learners themselves, and I have come up with this full picture. And this is how I proposed a solution. And then, which leads me into my next point, is how I solved for all. And it was only by looking at that big picture. It was really taking that step back. We were not solving for one single thing. We were not just solving for computer literacy. That was one part of the puzzle, but I always like to zoom out and think, okay, what else is there? And that was where I really got the buy-in from the senior leaders to approve the solution.
What I like about your proposal is that you didn't say, no, computer literacy skills aren't the direction to go in. It was more of a yes and. So acknowledging that stakeholders were onto something, but there was more to be seen and more to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So what else can you tell us? I'm super interested in just the conversation when you pitched this to stakeholders, because you knew that they asked for something and you were planning or crossing your fingers that you were going to deliver something else. How did that conversation go? Is there anything that we might be able to share with our listeners about how to pitch that to stakeholders?
So I listen to people and I actually write down their words. So when I pitch it back, I'm using their words, I'm using their sentences, their phrases, and so I pitch it back. So what I come in with is, this is where we're going. This is our end goal. This is what I've heard, and literally use quotes from them. And then I say, and this is what I propose.
What stood out to me in Candice's story was how she literally kept track of the exact words and phrases used by stakeholders and reflected them back when she made the pitch of why this solution is the better one compared to the solution that they requested from her originally. And she says that went a really long way, not only to get the buy-in that she needed, but also to maintain the trust and rapport with stakeholders by reporting back to them what mattered most in terms of their agenda or the expectations that they had for training. So, predictability number one, got to get buy-in from stakeholders. And in order to get buy-in, we have to have a great pitch. What's the second thing? Having an incredible solution that actually solves the root cause of the problem, getting in the way of the business results that we desire. Recall in Candice's story, she was working with a group of learners who were early in their career, and the goal of the program was to get these learners jobs and to have them be able to maintain those jobs well beyond their learning program, their readiness program. So let's take a look at the exact approach that Candice used to offer a solution that truly did make a difference for every single participant who went through.
And this is where I want to bring up a slide for our viewers on this, because I really want to highlight some of the success of the solution and how it really helped the end user and the company. And I'll show the numbers after this. But the slide says the approved solution, and in that black box is what they asked for. So that was the technical learning journey. So that was really all they had to do from a compliance standpoint, from a legal standpoint. That is all they had to do. They had to do the skills, which was, it's a 12-month program into 3 blocks, and that is all they had to do. So they were asking me to come in and add some technical stuff there. And this whole thing is what I proposed. So you'll see there that on the top is a behavioral learning journey. And really that was an induction and onboarding into, this is the company, this is how we work, and so forth. Month 2, I took them through my professional self, which was everything from how to dress, how to write emails, how to answer a phone, remembering that these, people were very much in the early stages of their career, if they had any experience. And then there was wellness, which I took them through. I think there were 7 components of wellness, like how to manage finances, how to look after your health, how to eat properly, like fitness, emotional, like the whole wellness journey. And then eventually we went into finances, which was really about, you're earning basically minimum wage. How do you save for your future? And lastly, a career aptitude and pathing. So it was, okay, where do you want to be? I prepared them on interview skills, how to write their resume. We practiced, we did some role playing there. And then there was on the job practice. So I literally created on the job tasks supporting both the technical skills and the behavioral skills. And that was rolled out in like month 2, 3, 5, 6, etc. And every week they had a task that would just reinforce the learning. Then at the top, because the money was so low, and we were like, okay, how can we motivate these learners? And that was the aspirational courses. So we would pair them up with a mentor coach, or, there were just other things that we would do. And so this was a full 12-month journey. And then what I also want to show you, because in the first conversation, I said the facilitators were my greatest success. At the bottom, we actually trained the facilitators too, which were facilitators and the managers. And we took them through, basic facilitation courses, how they need to learn and stay up to date with the latest stuff, how they teach in the classroom, and then how they coach. So they were actually, in the aspirational courses, they would become the coaches. They would coach through those on the job tasks, and so forth. And so we really incorporated this holistic solution that addressed all the problems. And when I say I solved for all, I really did, because then this itself became the company's competitive advantage. And when they were pitching for new work, they could say, we developed the full person, and we can guarantee you that this person will be job ready by the end of the 12 months.
What did you notice about her program? Well, first and foremost, it wasn't just one skill set that she was perfecting. She did the needs analysis to understand that in order for learners to be job ready and successful staying in jobs, there was a whole bunch of other things that were critical for them to feel confident and comfortable doing in order to be successful in the workforce. And that wasn't just technical skills. So you're probably all dying to know the third piece of the puzzle. Well, it's no mystery. That's having clear metrics. And I want to share with you Candice's numbers because they're a wonderful example and very simple, that we're all steeped in a deep understanding of what the particular business needed to not only be successful, but to ultimately have a competitive edge. So if you're wondering, where did these metrics come from? They came from stakeholders. They also came from the facilitators and the managers who had been a part of this program for a long time. If you're not clear on the metrics, have a few conversations just to make sure that you're on the right track. And most importantly, we have to get our baseline and we have to know our targets. What I love about this case study is that it has such a clear example of where were we, where do we want to be, and being able to tie the learning solution into what made it possible to get us to the targets and beyond that we ultimately needed.
Yeah,
so speaking of numbers, I can't,
yes,
as a numbers person and being in the space of measuring and evaluating learning, I can't not ask you about the numbers. And in some ways, I'm dying to know about the numbers. So, and you have them ready, and you've been dying to share them too. So tell me, you've got this whole person program that you've designed over 12 months. Let's talk about some of the numbers of what change you were able to facilitate before and after.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to talk to another slide here. So you should see the slide called the numbers on your screen now. And really on the left side is the metrics. And these were the metrics that we measured. Once again, starting with the end in mind, we defined these metrics up front. And the beginning, those were the numbers when I started the project, and 2 years later, that's where we ended. And what I really want to draw your attention to are two things. So the two things highlighted in the white blocks. So the first one is the completion rates. So in order for my clients to get funding back, they had to achieve an 80% completion rate. So the learners are on a formal thing called a learnership, and it's over 12 months, and you need 80% of those people to pass and to stay in the program, like not not disappear, for you to get your full funding. And when I started, they were on 72%. And I think that's why I got, I was pulled in the first place. So that was the big, huge one that we had to get over the line. So we started at 72. So it wasn't well under 80, but, and 2 years later, we were solidly on 91%. And we reached that 80% within the first year as well. But after the 2 years, we ended off at 91. The other key metric that I want to draw your attention to is what's called an absorption rate. So it's the employment rate. So again, another way to get more funding is for your learners to be employed in a full-time job once they finish those 12 months. And again, the mark was 80% and they were tracking at 64. So, and now our middleman, so someone like Samsung would be their client, and Samsung would have 20 learners and say, I'm going to give you these learners for a year. After the year, please make sure they're employable. And so after the year, like Samsung was not employing 80%, they couldn't. So it was, on 64, and they had many different clients for the 214 learners, but it was at 64%. And in the first year, we didn't quite hit that 80. We hit 78% in year one, but by year two, we hit the mark and we got 83% of those learners employed. And apparently, I just worked for them for the 2 years, but as I've stayed in touch, they've certainly maintained that with this approach. Another metric, the third and last one, which I'm pretty proud of, the number of learners went from 214 to 1,852, which is huge. They, doubled their staff, more than doubled their staff. They, just the business themselves that I worked for grew exponentially. And I want to pull that back to, it was a key differentiator, like their competitive advantage, that they were offering this holistic approach. It was never done before, even though learnerships have been in South Africa for 20 plus years. But no one was looking at it like with this holistic view. They were just looking at their technical skills. So we were able to grow the business hugely.
So if you're wondering where to begin, get clear on where it is that we want to go and establish the gap. Where are we today? Where do we need to be? Because if we don't have clear targets, then how do we know if we've been truly successful? Because what I observed in Candice's numbers, it's not that the goals were 100%. It wasn't 100% completion. It wasn't we want the entire community to be enrolled in our program. It wasn't that we needed to have 100% of people go to jobs and stay in them. 100% isn't a goal. It's not realistic. So we have to know what our targets are, and we have to know where we are in relationship to those targets that we hope to hit. So many of us skip over the part of getting our targets. Oftentimes the business will have those already. They're key performance indicators. But if you don't have those targets, create them. And if you don't know how to create them, set up a conversation with a few different members of your team, of different departments, anybody that might be considered a stakeholder in the success of the program. What would be a realistic target? You can probably figure out where you're at today, but where are we going? Where are we headed? Because if we don't know where we can say we were successful, then we can infinitely be spinning our wheels trying to improve something that doesn't really need improvement. So know where you're going and why, and when does success actually occur? Because sometimes it's not worth the energy or effort to go well beyond that. You have a lot of other programs and people that you can be serving. Lastly, we have Candice's lessons learned from this entire process of building stakeholder relationships, designing a program that was truly going to have the impact that it needed. And then thirdly, getting clear on those metrics and reporting back on the success. What would she have done differently that can help you to be faster, to be agile, and to ultimately have the success that you desire for your programs?
So as we look to wrap up this conversation, tell us about the lessons that you learned as you reflect back on this project.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 5 summarized here for you. Okay, so my first one, and I say this, I sound like a broken record, but start with the end in mind. If you don't have the metrics, if you don't know what you're working towards for the business, You'll do some good work, that's fine, but you're not going to be able to show your return on investment and your value to the business. And that's where you need to start. The second lesson learned was bring your expertise. So when I walked into those first couple meetings, I was, again, with the mindset of the customer's always right. They know what they want. And if I kept that mindset, I just would have delivered technical computer literacy skills. And so just know, I feel like we need to build our confidence. Like, just know, you know what you're doing, and bring that expertise to the table. Honestly, just bring yourself to the table. You know what you're doing. You've got this. So just bring it. The third thing is take time to understand the problem from all angles. So critical. So if you're just thinking leadership, you're not going to hit the mark. If you're just thinking your audience, you're not going to hit the mark. So identify all the stakeholders within this, problem or environment, whatever it is, and work with all of them. Get to know them get to know each of your stakeholders separately and see the problem from all angles. The fourth thing is there is always common ground. So, a lot of people think, what the learners need and what the business wants are going to be so vastly different. So I'm just going to look at it from the leader's perspective and solve for that, because at the end of the day, they're making the decisions. But I have never, and I've been now in this industry for 16, 17 years, I've never once had a situation where it's so vastly different that I couldn't find any common ground. It's never happened, and I've heard this, and it's so funny. I was like, some people say, well, if we open up, LinkedIn Learning, for example, people are just going to want to do piano lessons, and I think, great. That probably creates creativity, and that will link to business. So even if they just want to do piano lessons, even that can get linked to what the business wants. I promise you there's common ground. And then the fifth thing, and this is what I say will be written on my grave, speaking with people will always lead to better results. So the more you speak with people, the more information you gather, the more things you observe, the better your solution is going to be. Like, do not underestimate that. And not only will your solution be better, but you've also spoken to a lot of people. They now know you. And just through knowing you, you've probably built a lot of credibility.
My greatest takeaway as I reflect on the story of Candice going from zero to hero with stakeholders and designing a comprehensive program that measurably made an impact not only for the learner, but also clearly for the business. The biggest lesson for me, being a human being. It's not that complicated to build relationships with stakeholders when we just lean into the humanity of it all. Show that you care and show up. Find out what people are interested in from the stakeholder perspective and give them back reports. Show that you care about what they care about. That's just demonstrating a general human connection through a little common sense. It might take just a little bit more time to keep our stakeholders up to date on what's going on, but doing that builds the kind of relationship that we need to be true business partners. And once we have that relationship and we maintain it, our function as learning and development professionals is infinitely more impactful. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you, Candice, for sharing your story. I know I personally have learned a lot from it, and I hope that you have too. If you're looking for a place to meet other learning leaders like Candice and myself, please consider joining our community of practice. We meet every Monday at 12 Eastern Time to just connect, share resources, and dig into these stories of measurement and evaluation success so that we can all learn and improve together. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then.